Welcome back to the CEO Advantage podcast. Millie, I'm really pleased to see you back again, and I love your T-shirt.
Yes, got the hashtag no cants, which we'll talk about later.
Excellent.
To be back, Paul.
We will. We will. I'm really thrilled to have Martin Perelman as our guest today. Martin and I first met back in 2019 when we were both in the South Australian EY Entrepreneur of the Year award things. And then we had a fabulous time at Star City Casino in Sydney for the finals. Do you remember who the winner was that year, Martin?
Oh, what was his name? It's from a farming family. He was based in Lex, that's right.
Green Seal and Green Seal Capital, which
correct,
of course has lots of podcasts and audio books of its own these days now. Martin is the Chief Executive Officer of Medi Aesthetics. Martin joined Wesfarmers Health as the CEO of Medi Aesthetics in 2024 following the acquisition of Silk Laser Australia. He was the founding partner and CEO of Silk Laser Australia, a South Australian company that opened its first clinic in 2009. With a focus on high standard service, best technology, and providing value to clients, the company grew quickly, expanding its footprint with the purchase of Australian Skin Clinics and several other chains. Martin oversaw the listing of Silk Laser Australia on the Australian Stock Exchange in 2020, and we'll talk a little bit about what it takes to list a company on the stock exchange before it was acquired by Wesfarmers Health in 2023. With a management philosophy that allows his team to run their division autonomously to allow growth, he's also a believer in acquiring strong talent and skill sets to fast-track growth. Martin honed his collaborative approach early in his career as National Sales Manager for Omega and Tissot brands, and later the Head of Sales for Designer Accessories. Martin's passionate about leveraging opportunity, and his best ideas come while he's out walking to or from the office or on weekends at the golf course. Welcome, Martin. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Paul.
Thank you for making the time. And already, Millie, from our first two seasons, there are themes just in the way that Martin describes himself that we've heard some of our other founders refer to themselves, which is really, we'll unpack some of that in his leadership style. But we ask everyone the same question,
okay,
Martin, at the beginning. What was your first job that you got paid for?
That I got paid for. Okay, I was a bit of a late bloomer with work. For probably from when I was 17 to sort of 23, I was a golfer. So I traveled the world wanting to be a professional golfer, went to college in the US and did all of that. So in those, I was on the salary of my parents, and they looked after me very well. When I moved back to Adelaide after doing that stint, I wanted to continue to follow my golf passion. So I needed to find a job that allowed me to work at night and do golf during the day. So my first job was at Villy's office here making pasties. So I was in the pasty line. I used to get paid cash in a brown paper bag that I used to come and pick up every Friday. And I think I lasted about 4 months.
Okay.
And then I was like, that's not for me. I was getting up at 3 a.m. or 2 a.m, maybe 3, something like that. Start at 3:30, work till 7 or 8, come home, sleep, and then go to golf at sort of 1 p.m. And I quickly realized that it wasn't the job for me. And so that was my first start of work.
Yeah. How old were you when you went away? So you went overseas.
Yep.
To pursue your golf. How old were you?
Yeah, so I finished high school in 1995. I was quite young with a few of my other friends, actually. We were all quite young. My last exam was on my 17th birthday. Took a year off, my gap year, but my gap year was a golf year. Did that in Adelaide, and then I moved over just after my 18th birthday. So that was January of 97. Never moved out of home, and I was there for 4 years, to the end of 2000.
So where did you move to?
I moved to Daytona Beach in Florida. So I was at a Division 1 college there, who were really starting to invest in their golf program. And I moved there with a couple of other English guys and a guy from Egypt, a guy from South Africa, and a guy from Canada. And we started up their newly founded golf team. And that was where we all began.
And how did you connect with that opportunity?
Yeah, so in nowadays, if you think about it in 2025, college sport is really cemented in young kids now moving through in Australia. But if I go back to sort of the 90s, which doesn't seem that long ago in my opinion, but I know it is, it was a very different program. So there was a man by the name of John Hocknell, whose son was also Craig, who was probably one of the pioneers to going to college sports in the US. And he started a company called College Prospects of America. Mm-hmm. So when I made the junior state team, I decided that was one of the areas that we wanted to go down. My dad was really pushing me more. Mm-hmm. We had to create our digital resume. Now, in those days, that was on VHS.
Yeah.
And the videos were then replicated and sent via mail to all of the schools. And then they would look at those and look at your resume. And then it was random, like 2 a.m, we just started getting these random phone calls from college coaches all over the country saying that they liked what they saw and they wanted to offer a half scholarship, a quarter scholarship, or whatever it was. Yeah. And that's how it all began. It was all sort of a bit of a whirlwind.
And how did golf become part of you? You obviously grew up around it. Was your dad a golfer? And
yeah.
How did you get into golf?
Big brother. So I'm one of 4, 2 sisters, a brother, and then me, the youngest. Yep. My brother started playing golf with friends. As you always do, you wanted to be like your bro and do the same thing. Yeah. So I started playing golf, and playing golf then turned into endless summers over summer holidays where you'd be dropped off at 6 a.m. and picked up at 6 p.m. And that was my sort of hangout on the summer holidays.
Yeah.
And just living out in the golf course with a lot of other kids, you just sort of start to become, and slowly but surely, as I went through high school, all the other sports started to drop away, and golf became the sport. And from probably year 10 onwards, I knew that was what I wanted to pursue as my sport. And then, as I said, then you start to get better and you make a state team, and all of a sudden it continues to snowball.
Where were you a member?
So I lived up in the hills, so in Hawthorne, Blackwood, and I, as a kid, I've always was a member up at Blackwood Golf Course. Yeah. So I started as a real kid at Belair, and that golf course no longer exists, and then moved to Blackwood, and then I've been there a member on and off since I was 14.
Yeah.
It's funny. Every sports person all winds up at golf. So when you're a kid, like golf, everyone's like footballers and basketballers and cricketers and soccer players, and then there's the random kid that does golf. I mean, all those footballers, soccer players and cricket players all come back to golf at the end. And so they're like, oh, I wish I played it when I was a kid. So already starting my kids into golf as soon as possible, because I know that's the sport. It's got the longest lifespan in it, because your body can handle it a bit more than any other sport.
Yeah. It was one of the things, if you remember in Brent's one that came up, is golf is his passion and he's really good at it. And teases me about how not I am, considering I did the same thing. My mum used to drop me off in the morning and I'd play 2 or 3 rounds of golf and I'd have different friends come and join at different times of the day and spend all summer playing golf. So you would think I would be better at it, but it wasn't. He was surprised when I said, you don't have to be good at it to love it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I will go out and play golf for a great putt or a great par 3, and then get over the frustration, as long as it's good company, good weather.
You know, I still love the game probably more than I did as a kid. I just appreciate it for what it is, and I'm not the golfer that I was when I was a kid, but I love it just as much.
Yeah. So after golf,
what happened?
What happened?
So back to golf. So I finished that in end of 2000. Realized that living in the US and pursuing that as a profession wasn't for me, and realistically, I probably realized that it was just too hard. I wasn't at the level I needed to be. I was good, but not at that level. So moved back to Adelaide. Bit of a lost soul, if I'm honest. Moved back to Adelaide, in with the parents again, and then started share housing with a few friends. And somehow I found my way to Sydney in 2002-03. Finished up golf completely and got my first, what I'd call my first real job, which was applying for a job out of the paper as a state rep for Bomber Mercier, which is a small French watch brand. The reason I pick watches and stuff is my dad was a retail jeweler and had been his whole life. And so jewelry was in my blood, if that makes sense. And I'd worked on and off in Dad's store while I was sort of trying to find myself. And I started my career in watches, and that's where it sort of began, which is 2003-04.
Yeah.
And so that took you to Sydney. So you're away again from SA, but a boomerang South Australian, moving away and coming back and moving away and coming back. There's something about, I moved away, spent a little bit of time in the US, but spent most of the time in Sydney and came back as a boomerang South Australian. But there's something wonderful about being a South Australian somewhere else.
Yes.
Yeah.
Particularly in really prosperous cities where as a South Australian you scramble, you're sort of born scrambling. So you go somewhere where there's lots of prosperity and people don't seem to hustle as quickly or hustle more reluctantly than you. Did you find that?
Yeah, it's funny actually. You don't realize what you have until you're away and you're having it. So you move to the US and you're an Aussie and you become very proud of where you're from. And then you move to Sydney and you're very proud of being from SA. And I think 100% to your point is you have a bit of hustle in you being from a small city in Adelaide. And people say if you can make it in Adelaide, you can make it anywhere. And I always knew I wanted to move away from Adelaide to try and make my life. I probably at that stage didn't know I wanted to come back to Adelaide, but as you get older, you start to appreciate things in a different light. I loved my time in Sydney. I mean, I was there for 10 years. It's one of the most fun cities in the world. I always say money just slips through your fingers, but if you enjoy it for what it is, you'll have the best time of your life. But when we sort of got to the next stage of my partners and my life, Adelaide was logical. I was just very fortunate that my career allowed me to have an opportunity to come back to Adelaide, because it's always one of the challenging things is how do you make a career in Adelaide that is not medical or legal?
Absolutely. I know living in Sydney before being married and certainly before having children is just the most fabulous experience.
So much fun.
Yeah.
It is so much fun.
Yeah.
But it also, I was very conscious of wanting to, Georgia, my first child and daughter was born in 1999 and she was on a plane 10 days after being born to come back. Because I thought living in Sydney in that traffic and that sort of hustle life, I was entering a different phase and sitting in traffic and missing my child.
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, I lived in Paddington for 7 of those 10 years and we lived in a 3-bedroom townhouse and loved it. But we share a house with 3 others. And, thinking about what we have from a lifestyle now here in Adelaide, being able to have that in Sydney in where you want to live, even now with the career I've had, I almost find it impossible. I find it really challenging. But again, if you enjoy it for what it is, and you go there to have great life experiences, I couldn't recommend it enough.
And so what year was it that you came back to Adelaide from Sydney? So
I moved to Sydney probably late 2003, early 2004, and then I did 10 years there. So I moved back in 2014. Right. So we opened Silk in 2009, and then 2014 is when my partner and I, fortunate was my partner that I met was from Adelaide, and she was the main driver of wanting to come back to Adelaide, and she'd been in Sydney for 7 years. We didn't know each other. We're from Adelaide until our first date. So it was a complete random coincidence. And then she really wanted to stay in Adelaide and settle back down in Adelaide. And in that time, Silk was just starting to grow. And I convinced the other founders of Silk to give me an opportunity to actually run the business properly on a full-time basis rather than just remotely from Sydney. And they gave me a 6-month window to see if I could make a difference, and the rest is sort of history. So how do you get mixed up with other founders? We've spoken to some other founders, whether they solo, they just had an idea and they were working somewhere, they had an idea and broke away and did it themselves. We've spoken to people who've inherited or whether they wanted to or not, expected to become the CEO of their family enterprise. We've spoken to people who are professional CEOs that we refer to as professional CEOs, but they've
they haven't founded something, but they've always known that they were going to run on an organisation and have dedicated their lives to that. So you are not a solo founder. You founded with a group. So that's a different flavour again.
Yes.
Of founder. Tell us about how you and a group of people decide to become founders, and how did you come together?
Yeah. So a couple of parts to that. I suppose I never really thought I was going to ever have a career working in a normal business 9 to 5. It was never in my DNA. So my dad had run retail jewelry stores for his whole life and had always sort of instilled in his friends who were all business owners, had always instilled in me that the best opportunity for wealth creation or to be successful was to have your own business. Especially if you're not going down a medical or whatever, that sort of playbook. And so I'd always had that in the back of my mind that I wanted to have my own business. I suppose then the $1 million question is, what's the idea? My story is not a overly sophisticated story. Was 30 years of age, living in a share house in Paddington. One of the founders that was a very close friend of mine had an idea, had written a very simple business plan. And obviously it was his first idea for business. I was at the age of my life where I was single, not a lot of money in my pocket, but wanted to try something. And so it was as simple as I believed in the business plan, liked the idea, and the timing was just right for me to try something. But we didn't have outlandish ideas of how big a successful business could become. It was a very small, let's just do something as a bit of fun for a few years and see how well it goes.
Yeah. Where did you get the initial funding from?
Savings. So it was, each of us had put in $50,000 each. I didn't have 50,000. I had to borrow some from the bank, which Rule 101, don't borrow. Anyway, so we.
It's good. I like
this. Yeah, but that was, and I took the stage. Had no debts, no real, and so if I lost the money, I wasn't going to cripple me for life or anything like that. So we all put in. There's 4 of us put in 50,000 each, and that's how we began. And it wasn't a really big outlandish, like my sister did our store design, my best friend did our logo and website. We couldn't afford new lasers. We bought secondhand ones from Texas and fixed them in our garage in Paddington and then shipped them down there. We started with 2 staff that we hired that ended up having quite a career in our business, and obviously now moved on 15 years later. But it was very, very small. We didn't even understand what BAS was. We knew super, but we were so unsophisticated. You have no idea. But that's how we started.
Yeah, I love it. You just really tapped into who you knew around you that could help you bring this business to life.
Yeah. And look, the good thing about it in hindsight was all 4 of us had very different skill sets. So we had one that was very IT, digital, all around setting the business up as a digital platform. Myself was very operational, how to run a business and get into the weeds of managing people. Well, that was probably my strength. I had one which was the tradie that could fix things and build the stores, and then one that was an engineer who was analytical that could oversee and look at all it. So we didn't realize that at the time, but all of our unique skill sets all gave different perspectives, and that helped us sort of muddle our way through for the first few years. Some very robust conversations during that time, but it was also some really good learnings in the first few years of our career.
How did you maintain trust across the 4 of you with all the stress that starting out does and having robust conversations? You were friends, you were all friends beforehand?
Some of us were friends, some of us hadn't known each other, but we all became quite close, and I would say they're all definitely friends. And again, things I would do differently. There was no agreements in place or anything like that. It was all done on a handshake at the beginning. But again, there wasn't really anything of size or scale to put into an agreement. The business plan was a 3-year business plan to open 2 to 3 little laser hair removal clinics in Adelaide to start and learn business and then sell them and move on. It was nothing more than that. It was, a very simple very simple business model.
And some of the most successful businesses start with people who are it's a handshake and an agreement, and
Correct.
And the success of the business comes partly from the honor of those people fulfilling what they said they were going to do and being held to account for what they were going to do.
You're spot on. So, and I think in those first 4 to 5 years, that's exactly what we did. I mean, some would do different work and others would do different work, but we all put in our different perspectives and helped grow the business to where it was. And everyone fulfilled what they were required to do. And it's interesting, right? You have a very simple business idea, but as the years evolve, then new opportunities present themselves. And that's where sort of the opportunity for diversification or coming in investment, because as one partner may see an opportunity to take it one way, another partner goes, well, that's not where I want to take it. And this is where, it's important at the right times to be cognizant of what each person wants to do and making sure that you can make decisions in the best interest of all shareholders.
Yeah. So let's come to that in a second, shall we, about when the business starts to be successful, and then you find in your relationships with other people who work in the business, whether they're the founders or employees of the business, that success looks different. The same success looks different through different lenses and different views. So we'll come to that in a second. But I'm interested, were you all in Sydney starting your first business in Adelaide?
2 of us were in Sydney, 2 of us were in Adelaide.
Right.
But all 4 of us were working full-time jobs.
Yep.
So side hustle.
Yeah, it was a pure side hustle. So my 9 to 5 job was at one of the watch brands, and then I'd come home and then I would sit on the couch at home and do payroll or work on the website or create copy for our skincare brand or whatever it may have been. I learned to write code on a website. I remember that years ago, which I never knew how to do, but that's no one else could do it, so we had to do it.
Were you using Skype for your video, or were you even doing video calls at that stage?
No, just phone. Yep, an email. So again, very simple. So yeah, that was sort of the job, is 9 to 5 working a normal job, then coming home at night and working on that. And then we eventually managed to hire 1 person, then 2 people in head office. And the head office was one of our founders' sisters. And that's how it began. And she was the operations person. So again, nothing too fancy, but that's how we began.
That's wonderful. When did success start to become noticeable? Was it bubbles of a couple of you starting to recognize success and others not seeing that as success yet and pushing? Tell us about how success manifested itself.
I think my definition of success was what the future opportunities brought. So when I looked at success, I could see as we opened a new location and the opportunity, I could see that would continue to further growth, and I could see this really becoming something bigger that we could see, where others saw success of, well, we've opened 3 to 4, they are making a profit. My business plan was to open 3 and then to exit. I'd like to look at doing that because I've hit my success milestones. And, I want to stick to what I'd created in my business plan. And that was my execution. And there was my exit strategy. So that's where sort of we had differences of opinions, is as those opportunities presented itself, some of us wanted to continue to push the envelope and reinvest. Others wanted to go, well, I want to take money off the table, take that money and reinvest in another business. And so there was different times where people defined success. I think the clinics, we were in a very new space. So we were creating in South Australia a new industry. Obviously on the East Coast, there were competitors doing the same thing. And so we were in very new lands of helping educate things like what is laser hair removal. Now, if you look at today's demographic, everybody knows what laser hair removal is. But when we started in 2009, we had to educate what laser hair removal was, and people didn't really understand that. And so it's how much it's evolved over those 15 years is quite significant. But we're in a very new area. And so it was incredibly exciting because you could see the opportunity as you continue to educate and people were getting open to understanding what this was. But others were like, no, I've hit what I did in my business plan. I want to follow my process. I want to now exit and move on to the next thing.
So it's interesting you say exit, and were you the driver of the exit idea, or where did the exit idea come? Because for young business owners or early business owners, the idea of exit is not an early in the conversation,
sure,
right? But it came up early for you guys.
Yeah, I mean,
was that your dad's experience?
No, I mean, look, I was probably the opposite, to be honest with you. I was the one that wanted to keep pushing, and here I am 15 years later still doing it. Yeah. But I think the original business plan was a 3-year business plan, and the business plan was to open 2 or 3 clinics and then to sell that business and move on. And so that original business plan, that was the strategy that one of the founders and a few of those founders potentially wanted to do. And it's always that risk versus reward playbook. As I sort of got into the operational management of that business, and that was probably my natural experience. And so I probably, over those first few years, got into running the business a lot more operationally, where the others took more of a board role, if that makes sense. And so they took more of an objective view, where I was probably a little bit more subjective, because I was in the weeds every day trying to understand the business. But with that, I also saw future opportunities that this could become something really exciting for me. And again, if you think about what each person wants to do in their career, I always wanted to run my own business. So again, I was probably more highly motivated, as this could be a career path for me, where others were seeing it as an investment and then an exit strategy, and part of their learnings of how to invest in businesses and then to exit businesses. So again, everyone in different parts of their learnings of their business careers. But I had a different lens.
And your lens seems almost naturally to, you did business development and sales, and you're in the weeds. So working in amongst people and customer experience and the people delivering customer experience. Even to see him smile, then it's like this is what brings people joy, is what they turned out to be good at. And so the business grew, and your focus on service was part of that. Is that what became the competitive advantage of the business that saw it grow so successfully, do you think?
Yeah, it's a good insight. I mean, Silk is founded on great customer service and offering a level of quality of service that everyone believes in. And even to this day, staff that work at Silk call themselves Silkies, and they feel like they're part of a group. So we set that culture really strong early on, that we wanted to be the best in class for service. And as you get larger, it becomes challenging. I'm very fortunate that I have a great management team around me who have been on the journey with me that whole time and believe in the values that I believe in. And we don't ever try and sacrifice quality. And that's a non-negotiable. So whenever we think about things, we always think about the customer first and then work backwards to understand what's the most important one. And, it's a really important part of having a successful business. I mean, we're a service-based business. We're not necessarily a product-selling business. Obviously, they sometimes end up being the same thing. We do sell a product, but our business is based on labor and servicing that labor and selling a need or a solution to a customer's concerns.
One of the things that I've really admired about Silk, and I'd love to know which parts of it did it come from you, probably all of it, we'll find out, is this consistency through through the branding, through the service, through, every time you go to a Silk clinic, you're going to have the same thing, and you just can always rely on Silk, which I think is fantastic, as well as the marketing has just been spot on and everything like that. So and that's obviously been a big part of, the growth. So how is the branding, the marketing, the customer service, is this all something that you just knew, or did you have to bring on people to help with this? Or?
I mean, thank you. That's a really lovely compliment. It's something we really strive to. So we always want to make sure that if a customer comes into, I don't know, Silk Hyde Park or Silk in Casuarina in Darwin or Silk in Perth, that they theoretically have the same customer service. And so the fact that you've noticed that is really lovely to hear. We always wanted to ensure that education was at the foremost and front of our business. So, you obviously get staff that move through the business, but ensuring that we always have guaranteed requirements of how a staff is trained and what they bring forward. Again, continuity of staff through our business. From a marketing perspective, Alice has been in our business since she had her first, came back from maternity leave, and I think her boy is now 10. So, again, that consistency through. We don't try and reinvent the wheel. We try and have the same quality of service, same marketing message that comes through. We've been doing it so long now, we know what we believe, we know what the customer wants, but we have to continue to understand how the world and Australia changes and make sure we're always adhering to new trends. But again, making sure that we are that consistent backbone, because we're that affordable luxury for nearly everyday Australian women, and some men, but majority women. And we want to ensure that that message is nice and consistent, that you can always rely and trust on us.
You mentioned that as you came in, you're setting up in South Australia. There's lots of people established or ready to compete on the East Coast, but in Adelaide it was relatively new. Were there times when people said, well, you can't do that, or you can't set this up, or you can't be successful in Adelaide? Or were there people that told you that you couldn't do things that you were able to overcome and prove them wrong?
Yeah. I remember one of the conversations before we opened our first clinic. I won't say who, but it was a family member said, are you sure you want to do this? It was 2009, and I think the economy was going through a pretty challenging period in 2009. And they said, are you sure you want to be opening in the middle of what is about to become a recession? But again, it was our first business idea, and I had a genuine belief that if you have the right attitude and you can bring people on the journey with you, you've got the greatest opportunity to create success. Again, the definition of success was probably different to what our definition of success is now, but it still is the same ethos that we live through. So yes, I think when you have a business or you're creating entrepreneurial ideas, you're always going to get lots of naysayers that come through. But it's up to the leader to create the vision and make sure you have the people around you that believe in the vision. And I think if you can create that, you've given yourself the best opportunity to create success.
How do you walk that razor-thin line between self-belief and taking advice and sort of filtering?
Oh, that's a great question. It's a challenging one. I think you need to stay conscious of both. I think if I think about the last 10 years, we had a board that had unwavering belief in myself to execute, in saying that the board had a great variety of skill sets and expertise that could help bring in need when we needed, including private equity, etc. But again, it always came back to, Martin, what do you want to do? What's your thoughts? And so, you need the right people around you that can support you, but ultimately allow you to make the decision as the leader of the business and back you to make that decision. So I don't think it's one or the other. And you're right, it is walking a very fine, tight line, but you got to follow your gut. And I've always followed my gut of what the right thing to do is. And I still, to this day, we make decisions and I have some sleepless nights going, is this the right decision? But I always have in my head, one step backwards, 5 steps forwards, and always keep moving forward. And as long as you keep moving forward, you got to keep thinking what that longer term goal is. So you just can't focus on the short term pain, because the longer term goal is where we want to get to.
In my 25 years as a CEO, one of the hardest things to find was a consulting and advisory firm where they'd actually been CEOs. I created CEO Advantage to be the advisory firm I was looking for. Go to ceoadvantage.com.au and find out how we can help you and your team be the best in the business. I can remember I had a fabulous chairman that I was working with and had come up with an idea that I was sure was a good idea. And after a couple of years, I started to become sure that it was still a good idea, but the timing was terrible. And went through this period of going, gosh, do I keep pushing, knowing that I think the time is not right? And going to the chairman and saying, I think I'm going to pull the pin on this. And he said, are you changing your mind? And I said, no, I'm making a new decision based on better information than I started with. And I was thinking, please don't fire me or don't really berate me for, and he's like, this is why I let you do what you do. Because he said lots of people will not, they'll stubbornly pull the pin. They're too afraid to say that that's not the right path, or they'll stubbornly stick with it. And I was like, what a relief to have a chair that I could genuinely work with, and be who would push me all the time. If I was sort of asking too many questions, he'd say, why buy a dog and bark myself? Said, you tell me what you're going to do. And I'd be like, I was hoping you tell me.
Yeah.
When did the business get to the part where you thought we need a board and external people to give us some advice?
Yeah. So we opened our first clinic in 2009, and I'd moved back from Sydney in 2014. And in those stages, we'd had 5 clinics, give or take. The founders were at quite a complete separation of where the business wanted to go. We had some founders wanting to exit, some founders wanted to keep some bit in but divest, and some founders wanting to continue to move forward and reinvest. And so we were having some real challenges of what the right way to move forward was. Obviously, you remember, for first ever business owners, 5 years in business together, no formal agreement, etc. So we had some challenges.
But you didn't, you all held together as far as being...
Yeah, we had some mediated meetings though, and a few things like that. So what we had decided though was we needed to bring in an investor to allow us to all reach what we wanted to. So that would allow some people to exit. Some people that wanted to stay in could move in with those investment partners, or the other option was partners could buy out other partners. But again, the business was nowhere at the stage where I don't think any founder was willing to put their life savings or severe debt into buying out other partners. So
now a shareholders agreement checklist starts to become the pathway.
And hindsight's a wonderful thing. If I had that opportunity again, I'd love to have bought out my shareholders, but we couldn't do that at that stage. So we, again, very small, found a small business broker in Adelaide, and reached out to our bank manager and introduced to some high net worths who really took an interest in and keen lightning for the business, and took a 40% share in the business. And with that 40% share, allowed some of those founders that wanted to exit or divest to do that. And also was probably one of the best decisions, because with that investment brought our first corporate governance, which was the setting up of a board, the bringing in of an independent chair, and the reinvestment of all the money back into the business rather than dividends and all that type of stuff.
How had you reported to a board before?
Never in my life.
So,
well, informally, I reported to the other founders.
Sure.
And they were very informal, but nothing minuted, nothing. I had no idea about that board. And so they brought a lot of very specific, all of a sudden we're interviewing for independent chairs and chairs that were sitting on Port Adelaide boards and Crow and all this type of stuff, right? Yeah. So very sophisticated. And we're interviewing them to be paid roles in our business.
Yeah.
And so we felt very grown up at that stage.
Yeah. But it's incredibly brave and humble, but also ambitious of you to put yourself in amongst that, having not done that before. And when I say, you say to founders, hey, how did you know how to do that? Well, I didn't.
No.
So you threw yourself into a situation with some big fish who knew stuff that you didn't know.
Yes.
But clearly there's an internal narrative that's going on for you that's pushing you into outside of your comfort zone, outside of your knowledge, but having the confidence that you know how to learn fast. So can you just tell us, what does that narrative sound like? How did that feel for you at the time, going, gosh, there's a lot I'm going to find out that I didn't know?
Yeah, look, it was we're talking back, 2015, 16. It was a huge emotional roller coaster, I had a real belief that we were on something really special. but I had a very apart founder group that some wanted to exit. And so the only logical opportunity was to bring in investment and put myself in a position where I could then relay my passion and belief to a new set of owners and founders. And so I don't know if I ever knew when was the right time, but it was the only logical opportunity that allowed me to deliver what I thought was the greatest opportunity for this business to be able to grow and expand. And I always took that belief that I would rather be able to grow this business and have a smaller piece of a bigger business rather than sell the business and see what could have been. And so I took the opportunity. And I knew that I was a big part of why the business had gotten to where it was, to actually attract investment. You know, remember I'd only started as the CEO of the business in 2014 middle, and by early 2015, we'd already found a business, someone to buy the business for 40%. And so I knew that the pace that I would work at and the drive and the passion that I had in the business, that the investors would want that and continue to see that opportunity.
How did you communicate that passion? And you talked about having this long-term goal and how important, and this vision that you had for Silk. How did you communicate that with your teams? And
I don't know how to actually answer that question. That's a really good question. I'm a very highly passionate person, the way I talk and the way I believe in things, and everyone calls me a very glass half full person. And I think my passion for the business, or just the way I look at things, is very infectious to the people around me. I've been very fortunate that all of the management team that have worked for me or beside me have been with me now for well over 5 years, and going up to 10 years. And I think that's probably one of the main reasons why the business has been so successful is the ability to retain my management team, who's huge amounts of IP, but they genuinely believe in what we stand for as a company and genuinely believe and enjoy working for me. I don't have a logical, this is what I do. I just live and breathe it every day. And I'm willing to do anything and everything in the business and speak to anyone and everyone. And if they're not going to do it, I'll do it myself. And so I just lead by example. And that's probably the only way I could probably articulate it is I've done every single job in the company at one stage, depending on the size. And so nearly everybody talks to me about, well, if nobody knows, I'll just go ask Martin because I know he'll know the answer to this and I'll be able to pull out something that's happened from blah, blah, blah time. And again, it just led by example.
Yeah. So it's so interesting, like something that you probably, when you first started out, you probably didn't know much about laser hair removal and silk or the sector, right, when you first started. But now, 10 years into the business, you just knew absolutely everything and every single role, everything. I think that's probably, sounds like it really helped with the success.
Yeah, I mean, the business had one person, operations, and we would do every single role in the company. And then as you added a second person, then, you just slowly diversified. So I have literally done every single job in the company. So I at least have a little bit of knowledge about everything and be able to have some meaningful conversations. And then if it talks about the actual services or what we deliver, I would almost call myself a matter expert on most of those businesses, although I've got no formal training on any of them.
Yeah, awesome.
So you've got a 40% shareholding now is with investors.
Yep.
You introduce corporate governance, which you're now learning about really quickly.
Yep.
So you grew again as a result of that process. And a new phase of investor comes into the business. Describe what that stage from, you've gone from startup to somebody else believing in you enough to put their money into it.
Yes.
Growing again and being successful. So you've got a pretty good strike rate of being successful. Was it 100% strike rate of being successful, or was it?
Yeah. So to give you a bit of a timeline, we took in private net worth investment in late 2015, early 2016. With that, a very clear strategy by the board to start to grow interstate, start to franchise, start to really see what this business could do, with myself driving and building out a support office. the functionality of an independent board as well, an independent chair. That went along for about 2 years and continuing to have success. We had opened in multiple states by then, and those clinics were starting to do really well and starting to grow. And then in late 2017, private equity came knocking. And then we had private equity invest in 2018. They took a 67% shareholding in the business. So it took a majority. Now, private equity did that for a couple of reasons. And one of the reasons they liked, because we were way too small for their business. I think by then we had about 12 clinics and we were doing probably give or take $2 million of, not even $2 million, $1.5 million of profit for the whole business. It wasn't very huge, but they loved that our business was set up for scale. It had corporate governance, it had structure. It had all the things that they look for in a bigger business. We just weren't there and were needing the investment to be able to scale. And we had what we believe was a good rinse and repeat to be able to roll out businesses at scale and be able to have the same sort of offering and the consistency that obviously you talked about before.
So let's just take a step back. There was a bit of assumed knowledge, particularly in that private equity came knocking. When there's a knock at the door from private equity, for people who are running their own business who haven't had that happen or would like that to happen, what does that sound like? What do they say to you? What's the approach?
Yeah, so we knew the industry was going through some really significant growth. So as we were going through growth in South Australia and Northern Territory, Tasmania, the East Coast was going through really significant growth as well. And one of our biggest competitors had just been bought by one of the world's largest private equity, and that was their second round of private equity, and they were in the sort of hundreds of millions of dollars. So we knew that the industry was going through really big growth, and there'll be a great opportunity for a second mover opportunity, i.e. be the next player in the playbook. Our strategy was very, very clear. Our strategy was to fill up all the gaps outside of the East Coast play. And so when someone wanted to buy a national footprint to be the competitor, we were the logical acquisition target. It was a really simple, straightforward play. So everywhere where the big East Coast players went, we didn't go, and we went all to the other areas. So we were a nice sort of bolt-on. We got approached through private equity through our lawyer. So nothing more sophisticated. I got a phone call from, our lawyer called our chairman and said, I've had a private equity reach out. They would like to have a conversation with you guys about a potential investment opportunity. It was nothing more than they flew down and talked about that they'd been interested in the sector for a while and wanted to understand a bit about our business and see if it was something of interest to us. And so after probably 2 or 3 weeks of conversations, they were really excited by what they saw and really excited by the opportunity that they saw. I remember it distinctly, actually, a very specific timing that came in, and we were invested by Advent Partners, who is a Melbourne-based private equity. And we'd done the presentation. I'd taken them around to visit our clinics, etc., and we'd done a bit of a show and tell for a couple of weeks. And as I was dropping the 2 private equity guys off at the hotel, I asked one of them, I said, you've obviously been looking at this industry for quite a while. Why are you interested in us? Because there are lots of East Coast players that are much bigger than us and far more sophisticated than what we are. Why are you looking to invest in us? And his name was Robert, and he put his hand on my shoulder and he goes, Martin, we hadn't found the right racehorse, but we have now. And that was it.
Fantastic. There was something else that Martin said there as well, that was the power of being an anomaly as opposed to being the same. Everywhere the big guys went, we didn't. So that idea of becoming an anomaly as opposed to a simile of everybody else in the market is really underestimated as a strategy, isn't it?
Well, I mean, look, I didn't know. It was a very clear strategy for us, but what it also allowed us to do is fly under the radar too. So we were growing probably at the same rate as a lot of the East Coast players, but nobody knew about us. No one had ever heard of us. And then all of a sudden we're acquired, and then all of a sudden we're making acquisitions and people are like, who are these guys?
Yeah. Isn't that the most fun question to get?
Yeah. So it allowed us to just fly completely out of under the radar, out of all the spotlight, and all the big East Coast players were the ones that everybody was keeping an eye on and looking at.
Private equity has, and oftentimes with good cause, gets a bad rap in terms of coming in and wanting to accelerate growth at the cost of the core principles of the business, whether that's the service model or the staff treatment. But that didn't happen.
No.
What do you think is the difference between PE coming in and there's lots of examples of them rushing to listing, having cut the guts out of the company. It's barely recognisable, but that didn't happen for you. What's the difference between those two stories, and why was yours a success?
Look, I had a wonderful experience with private equity. We had ended up, when private equity came knocking, we had a couple of different private equity opportunities. We picked Advent Partners and they picked us, but we picked Advent Partners from a board because they had a great reputation of working well with management. They came in as a consultative approach. And again, they really loved founder-led businesses and being able to build that business up. And ultimately, they formed part of the board, and that board had an unwavering belief in myself to execute. And there is no way, as the leader of that business, I would ever, with myself as the CEO, allow them to do that type of strategy. But nor did they want to. So the way they structured the deal was that 67% ownership was to get some founders further off the table and a liquidity event for certain people, which was exciting. But also be able to put well-earned capital, I think we put in 12 million, I think it was the number, into the business to allow us to go through some fast growth. You also got to remember, we didn't have a big office at that time. We were running 12 clinics, and I think my team was 5.
Wow.
Maybe 5 people in the office. Like, it wasn't, we had one person in finance plus one person in finance, external accountant, one marketing person, one operations person, and one educator, and me. Like, it was very, very small.
That is that's lean overhead.
Yeah, very, very lean. But that's what we've always, and so that's what my team is now, even to this day. That's what they used to work on, because they just work lean and we're very frugal and we try and save every dollar.
Yeah.
So then you exploded to how many stores?
2018 was our big year. Okay. So 2018 was the year that we got private investment in, I think we transacted, I'm going to say right before Christmas. Oh no, January 11th was the final transaction day, I think it was, or January 10th. In that year, in 2018, we opened, I think, close to 25 clinics from 12. We acquired a skincare brand, and we acquired one of the smaller East Coast players as well, giving us a New South Wales footprint. So we went from, I'm going to say 12 to something like 35, 40 something clinics, maybe even 50, 45 or something. And bought a skincare brand to get that vertical integration. And we did it on a shoestring team, but we built that team. Well, I always say that we were sort of flying the plane and building it at the same time. But we did it. It broke a lot of people, a few tears, but we got through it. And then you go through the pains of profitability, the clinic surviving, and then success. But again, clear leadership, clear franchisees that have the same passion to be able to try and drive that business to be successful.
Did you go through a patch where, and particularly as the CEO and the leader of the business, where you go through these patches where revenue's gone up, scale's gone up, profitability's now going south, and you wonder, gosh, do we keep going forward or do we retreat back to where it was profit? And
we actually went through that a few times. Actually, it was really interesting. I actually needed some advice from my private equity on that, and they used to call it the step pattern. So, you build a certain layer of management, you can get to a certain size, and then you start to flatline. You need to build a next layer of management to grow to the next level. And so, you can push it to a certain size. And what they gave me advice on is that businesses often found it really really hard to go from one step to the next step. And that's where private equity would come in, because they didn't have the cost to be able to build out the infrastructure to manage the treading water or the losses, because you build in this extra layer of management to be able to go to the next size. So, that was probably a really big learning for me of how do you manage that next step change in your business? Because they find with founders can build to a certain size and they can't necessarily or have the want or ability to go to the next size and put their hard-earned capital and risk it all. And that's where private equity comes in. Well, we'll invest in that so you can build it to that size, and then we expect you to go harder again.
Yeah. What professional development were you doing for yourself? Where were you, apart from asking for advice and listening to people, what else were you doing to learn?
My learning was on the tools. So I did nothing outside of living and breathing and working on the business every day. So I was out on the road, traveling, meeting landlords. And so mine was learning literally on the job all day, every day. And so again, we run a very, very small team. And so I would be doing the job of 3 or 4 people and would be just doing that out there. So everything that I've learned over my 15 years at Silk has not been from an external professional development outside of my obviously uni degrees early on, but it's all been just through my journey of investment, corporate governance, private equity investment, ASX listing, and then Wesfarmers acquisition.
All on the job.
All on the job.
So EY come knocking and give you a call in 2019 and say, hey, Martin, we think you're a bit of a rock star and are going to give you an award and invite you to town hall.
Yes.
How did that go? How did being recognised for that single-minded passion, a small world of your work and really focusing on that work, and then someone comes along and says, we want to give you a gong in recognition of how clever you are. How did that go for you, that recognition?
It was unbelievably humbling. I mean, it came out of the blue. I received a phone call from a gentleman by the name of Tristan, who worked at CBA at the time. And he called me and said, look, I've been involved in this company's program and I'd like to put you forward for an award. I'd like you to meet with these people and speak to Anthony and have a bit of a chat around what you've done and etc. And look, again, we were we were 2019. So we were into private equity. We were in a pretty strong growth. And so I sort of went, oh, yeah, okay. I didn't really think much of it. And then I did a couple of interviews and a few discussions. And then all of a sudden, I'm being interviewed by Hugh Remington as the winner of the South Australian Entrepreneur of the Year Award and this specific category and off to the Nationals. And again, it was all a bit of a whirlwind because, you go into create a business and you just want to be good at what you do. There wasn't any real more motivation than just having a good business and trying to get the business and myself to where I thought the business could be and reaching its goals. You sort of go in thinking that you want to do this or win this, and there was no ulterior motive more than just being successful. And it was a very surreal moment.
It is a weird moment when you get people recognizing you for what you did and think, I didn't know that you were watching.
100%.
Because I was just getting stuff done.
Correct. I mean, look, when private equity came and approached us, they said, we've been watching your company for years. I'm like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
We're just a small little Adelaide company just opening a couple of clinics. And like, we've been seeing you went from this to this. And I'm like, how could you possibly know what we are doing? But it was an amazing time.
Yeah. So you go to, it's 2019.
Yep.
Now lots of people have been noticing you. More and more people are noticing you. And it's time to take a run to the stock exchange. Do you remember who came up with that idea?
Well,
remember the board meeting where that one was decided?
2020, the highs of highs and the lows of lows.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say March 26th, 2020 is probably the most biggest day of my life was the announcement of the country shutting down for COVID. 53 leases, a huge head office team, and we were told that that time nobody knew what was going on.
Yeah.
basically having to stand down 500 employees, having to tell your head office that you couldn't afford to pay them, having daily board meetings just to understand and manage cash flow, having to pivot to how we could try and make $1 just to sort of make ends meet.
Yeah.
All working from home.
Because JobKeeper wasn't a thing earlier.
JobKeeper didn't exist. No one knew. And landlords were going through the same thing you were going through. Nobody knew. Yeah. Suppliers, you have suppliers that are 30 to 60 days in advance, and all of a sudden you stop the turnover. You still got all these supplier invoices coming through, but no turnover to pay it. And so dealing with suppliers that I can't pay your bills, dealing with wages, and you've obviously got to pay out certain wages and ensure that people are being paid, but you've only got a certain amount of cash to manage that. Yeah. So it was an unbelievably challenging time, but I was very fortunate that I had a team we picked 10 people, all my leaders in my team. We all got paid the exact same amount. We all got paid, I'm going to say we could afford to pay everyone $1,000 a week. 10 people.
Yeah.
So we all got paid the exact same amount, $1,000 a week each, for the first few months, and everybody else stood down on no pay. Mm-hmm. And we would have daily meetings, and we created an e-commerce site, and we managed that. And we started to make a bit of money so we could actually just tread water. Mm-hmm. And that money was just paying our salaries and just getting us through. And then, what would then come is the most unbelievable trading period of my life. We came out in, when was it? June, July. And who knew that revenge spending and Zoom face would be a thing.
Yeah.
And we were one of the biggest benefiters in the world of a post-COVID world. Everyone had spent 3 months looking at themselves on Zoom and realized that they didn't love what they saw and that they wanted to go to their local clinic and spruce themselves up. And we literally had lineups out the door.
Wow.
30 meters down the road.
How fantastic.
Our Hyde Park clinic, one of my board members called me and said, I just drove past Silk High Park. And he said there was a lineup 2 meters apart because of COVID, 30 meters down the road. Yeah. It was out of control. And that was in June, July. And then the board, private equity board, had called a meeting for us and said, we think there might be a good opportunity to list. And we think we would like you to do that. Again, some very robust conversations because the private equity play was not that play. The private equity play was to be the company that would be acquired by one of the big East Coast players. But they saw it as an opportunity. We as a board decided to move forward with that. We would be the first cosmetic aesthetic public listing, pure play, which was really exciting. And so we saw that as the next opportunity. So from probably, I think most people talk about listing on the ASX is between a 6 and 12 month process. The board gave us the challenge of, they announced that they wanted to do it in August and they wanted to get it done before Christmas. What? So they gave us a 3 month window.
3 months.
So all hands on deck.
You obviously had good governance structures in place to be able to fill in lots of blanks.
Yeah, like we bought a wonderful advisory company, Hybrid Partners, that came on board. We used our lawyers, Canes, out of here of Adelaide. GTs from accounting and perks here in Adelaide as well. We had all hands on deck being able to help us get that. And everybody was doing everything. My chair and private equity helped with writing the prospectus with Highbury. I was literally with my CFO and COO doing 6 hours a day presentations to all the different ASX companies that would invest and doing that 5 days a week, and then the rest of the team were just running the business. And it was a complete whirlwind, but we managed to get there, and we were the last company on the ASX to list before Christmas.
Wow. Oh. So what an intense professional development you went under.
That was the School of Hard Knocks for 3 months. Well, that year was everything. What a huge learning curve. But listing on the ASX was arguably the most rewarding moment in my working career.
I saw that beautiful photo of you and your wife and your kids with the bell. That was
that sort of is a bit surreal. That wasn't obviously meant to be. The playbook was myself, the private equity, and the whole board were meant to ring the bell.
Okay.
And I got up and made a speech, and and they said, we want you to do it with the kids. So ended up coming out. That was great.
It's beautiful.
What a wonderful thing to be able to do, and what wonderful opportunity for them as well.
It's incredible.
So you didn't remain listed for very long.
No.
So you didn't have to suffer too many annual reporting cycles.
Well, it ended up being 3 years. So we listed, I think, December 16, I think it was.
Yeah.
And then we delisted November 30, December 23. So it was pretty well 3 years to the day.
Yep.
It was a pretty cool 3 years. I learned a huge amount. It opened up my whole world to what ASX life was like. I learned that the value of a company is not necessarily based on the financials, it's based on sentiment of the market. And I found that a really challenging, interesting thing to do, to navigate your way through, because what your belief on value was different to what the market might believe on value, whether that be positive or negative. We had valuations that were outrageously high for our company, and then we also had valuations that were outrageously low for our company. And you've got to manage your way through that. But what I found the common theme across the entire business of my career is even the same in ASX life. It's all about telling your story and making sure that your investors and people that are investing in you believe in that story and your ability to execute against that story.
And that's the last bit's the most important bit, is like that I tell a story and then deliver.
Correct. So what's the story, and will he be able to, or she be able to deliver against that story?
Yeah. So lesson number 4 comes, investment story number 4 comes in, and you delist.
Yes.
Now, you must have an extraordinary level of pragmatism and humility and all sorts of remarkable qualities because there are so many CEOs and founders who can get in their own way at this point. But so far in your career, you haven't let ego, or you haven't drunk your own Kool-Aid to the point where it's caused a challenge. And you're such a safe pair of hands that a purchaser comes along and takes you off the share market, but keeps you on board.
Yes.
Tell us about how that knock on the door comes and what it sounds like.
Yeah, so listing on the ASX, we obviously got to go through our next phase of growth. So instead of being acquired from some of those East Coast players, we got to acquire some of those East Coast players. And so it was the same playbook, but just in reverse.
Amazing.
And then all of a sudden, here we are, a South Australian company being the second largest player in Australia. I received a phone call from a company representing a large conglomerate, they wouldn't tell us who it was, that wanted to maybe take an opportunity to acquire us. And at that stage, we also had an approach from an overseas company wanting the same thing. My board and I, especially driven by me, had a belief that consolidation in the industry was really important at that time. There were lots of smaller chains of 5 to 10 clinics all sort of trying to muddle around. And we were probably the one large company trying to bring all those companies together. So they saw that as an opportunity. And so for myself in perspective, I always had this belief that the company could be bigger than what it was. And it's not about me, it's about where this company could get to. And so by taking my not drinking any of the Kool-Aid and taking my hat off, what was the best for the company and for the industry. And I believed an acquisition by Wesfarmers was the best because they had one of our competitors and it gave us an opportunity to further consolidate. And also in an industry that was continuing to change, it allowed us to have support from a company like Wesfarmers too.
I'd like to pivot now. We've had so many learning opportunities, and you've gobbled up all those learning opportunities and you've been successful. Thinking back to your young golfer just moving overseas,
yes,
what advice would wise, successful Martin have for that young Martin heading off overseas for the first time?
Oh, wow. I think through your whole life, you always have varying inflections of doubt and self-doubt. And I think the one piece I would say to my younger self in any parts of where I was going is just make sure you believe in who you are and be true to yourself of the ability of what you can do to deliver. And I've gone through waves of self-doubt of, am I doing the right thing? And that could have been in golf, it could have been in parts of the career, but just stay true to who you are. And I think you'll put yourself in a pretty good position in life.
What would the young Martin, if getting on that plane, who got a glimpse at a crystal ball and saw you now, what would he say?
Geez, why didn't you become your professional golfer? Geez,
yeah.
No, what I'd say is just ensure you focus on all aspects of your life. I think as I've gotten older and my career has become very successful, what I would say is I had to have some early sacrifices on a personal life as I was building that business up. Obviously, that was very fruitful and my family and I are enjoying the rewards of that, but just make sure you have a really good work-life balance. I think it's really important. Be able to work hard, but also be able to switch off. And it's probably always one of the challenges when you're in hyper growth or you're growing your business is how do you get that right balance? I feel I have it now, which is really good, but probably in those early days, I probably didn't have it. And they're probably the one things if I could have tweaked a little bit, that's probably where I would have gone. So just ensure you have a good life balance because you need that personal release to be able to manage all parts of your life.
There is this notion of be kind to yourself tomorrow, but remember to be kind to yourself tomorrow. It's okay to be tough on yourself today, but make sure you're kind to yourself tomorrow and reward yourself for what you did. Martin, it's been a tough day. You're really stressed out, but you're on your way home and a song comes on the radio that no matter how grumpy you are, you can't not smile when you hear it. What's that song?
Oh, gosh. So my mornings now are driving my daughter Charlie to Seymour in year 5. She takes control of Spotify and she is currently playing a lot of Dean Lewis, which is a local Aussie singer but is global. And so at the moment, the songs that put a smile on my face are usually all the stuff that Charlie is listening to. And so it is all your top 40 cringeworthy teeny bopper music, but that is my life.
Yeah, that's awesome. What a great answer. We haven't had that one before. That's brilliant. Martin Perelman, thank you so much for joining us on CEO Advantage Podcast. We've loved having you. It's been excellent.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you.